Lezzetli Ambócta Mélyéig.
As photographers, we constantly face limitations. Countless times have I wanted to go out and take photos before suddenly coming to the conclusion that it's either too cold, too wet, or coming up with an excuse not to do something. Now, this isn't to say that limitations aren't there or they don't affect you. This is to say how we can get around them and really spend the best amount of time doing the things that we actually love will allow you to really push those barriers and ultimately break the expectations that are generally put upon you. When applying this to photography and to the medium just in general, we have limitations in camera, in the ability to understand the ins and outs of what it can actually do. And well,
the first point is realistically define the limitation itself. Now, what limitations are you going to experience as a photographer? And a lot of the time you have to prepare for those beforehand. So when I'm shooting corporate stuff, for example, I have to think about what people are wearing. I have to think about their skin tone and their textures. I have to think about the types of light modifiers that I'm going to use. Limitations are something that as photographers, we're all going to experience. And it very much comes down to the type of photographer you are and the conditions that you're in. And also what could possibly go wrong. You've got to be thinking about that. What could actually not work for me in this situation? What could I be facing against? Often, as photographers, we may find ourselves going to look at a particular venue beforehand, or even just going to meet the people that you're going to be photographing and understanding their personalities and what they feel uncomfortable with, because other people can also be your limitation. Understanding limitations fully beforehand and preparing yourself before any kind of job that you do or any kind of photographic experience you put yourself through first generally tends to make you a better photographer. So that can only be helpful, can only be useful.
Also, on the other hand, applying limitations to how you do photography or your creative work can really force you to think outside the box and really expand your ability. For example, have you tried something like film where there is a lot more limitations because the cameras weren't as good as they are now? And with this, you gain a new kind of understanding as to kind of what a camera can really do. With this, you can really understand what a camera can really do and understand your more professional or digital stuff in a new way to make you a better photographer. Cameras these days are super powerful. 90% of them are just good cameras. There's nothing you can really say against that. New, used, and everything in between, they all have their limitations. So really understanding this, or perhaps applying those limitations to yourself, will allow you to really be able to take photos in a different way, understand things in a new light, and ultimately make your images and make your creative work that much better. And in this retrospect, limitations can sometimes be very, very useful.
And to double on that, not only this, but are you really pushing yourself as a photographer? Now, a lot of the time as photographers, we tend to stick in our comfort zones. We tend to stick to the same ISO numbers or the same shutter speeds. Or do we sit at f2.8 the entire job or f1.4, or do we mix up our apertures? Well, you know, that's a comfort zone. And you have to think of that. You have to think, what else can I be doing that pushes me in different areas, different directions? Should I, instead of shooting f1.4 all the time, should I now be shooting at f5.6, blending in studio lighting? Should I incorporate studio lighting into my work? Should I be trying out different lenses or different camera sensors? There's lots of different things that as photographers we can push further in order to improve ourselves and take ourselves away from our main comfort zone. The comfort zone is too easy to be in. And in the last 15 years, I've gone from shooting weddings to now shooting corporate. And I'm having to readjust how I'm shooting constantly. I'm having to readjust the types of lenses that I'm taking with me, the way in which I engage with my client, or the way in which I speak to my client, generally speaking. And I'm looking for things that I wouldn't have necessarily been looking at if I was shooting a groom compared to a big CEO of a multi-million-pound company. So taking yourself out of your comfort zone is the right way forward. And the comfort zone itself even though it's been consistent and reliable for you, could actually be a limitation. Think of it that way.
What I want you to take away from this video is that you need to understand your limitations. Apply them when needed. Break them down when you can. Learn, adapt, and develop, as these are key skills that any photographer and videographer, creative in general, needs to become better.
In the last 12 months, I've made some real dramatic changes to who I am as a photographer, and to be honest with you, I've struggled with what kind of identity that I now sit in, because I used to be a wedding photographer for so long, and now I'm shooting corporate stuff, like I mentioned to you earlier. So the limitation for me wasn't necessarily just about my equipment and what camera I'm carrying around, but also about what I enjoy, who I am. And that's another thing. You can be your biggest limitation. And sometimes people find that really hard to accept and really hard to admit. But it's the truth, because you're guided by your interpretation of what is right and what is successful. Throwing yourself into a new environment can be really scary, but the truth is, that limitation only ever holds you back. Push further, push harder.
Camera Centre UK do both new, used, old cameras and everything else in between. So make sure you go over to cameracenteruk.com to check out the latest and greatest in camera technology, but also the old stuff as well. If you like this video, please like, follow, and subscribe if you want to see more. Also, if you like this kind of content, let us know. Put a comment in down below. It's a little bit different. We're going to be doing reviews still, but applying a little bit more kind of like philosophical edge to it. Anyway, see you next time.